Hello, everybody. It's Holly from Besotted Orchids. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would like to share with you my zygopetalum collection. I did have a viewer who was interested in watering and a little bit of care tips on them, so I'm going to tell you what I do. Not necessarily what is positively going to work in your environment because so many environments are so different, but in my home environment, which we don't do any air conditioning in here. So in the summertime, it just does get rather warm. But I don't run humidifiers. I don't have misters. So this is basically what's working for me. And I'm imagining, other than the no air conditioning, that it is pretty standard. A lot of homes, especially in the US, are going to be running like that. Now over here, I am just going to start out. I'm going to be open. I'm going to be honest. This orchid here is struggling. You can see where I've had to cut a little bit of the tip off. This is, let me see. It's Subitara Melinda Marie Blue Moon. And I don't know, it's just struggling a little bit. I would think I have it maybe oversized, overpotted, and I'm considering dropping down the pot size and see if that helps. But that typically is just a moisture issue if you have too large of a pot, and zygopetalums like moisture. So I'm not sure that's really the problem. This is in a mix of orchid bark and sphagnum moss. And it just gets the typical care. Every one of them get the same care. They all get about once a week. They get a quick dip in and out of water. If I see one that's a little more dry, I will soak it in a bowl of water for a little bit longer just to really hydrate it. I'm going to put my tag back because, as you know, my tags wander off. Now over here is a very pretty orchid. It's a little more diminutive in size, so it's a little smaller, but it is still going to want its horizontal growth. They still want to get, I don't know, each new leaf just wants to just spread out further and further. So they're not going to be height monsters. Not all of them. I do have a couple over here that you will see in a minute that are very large. And I do have 7 of these in total, 7 different ones. So this has a lot of new growth on it. And like I said, it's not a large one like some you're going to see in a minute. It does stay a little bit smaller. So really, if you're not looking for a giant zygopetalum, research it. This one here is Zygonesia, and maybe that's the key. Maybe that's the type of zygopetalum that just stays a little bit smaller. Because, yeah, it's a lot easier to handle than, let me show you. This one here. Oh my goodness. This is a massive, I don't care how many orchids I've had. She's up there with the top on the size. She's a very large orchid. This is Advanced Australia, came from Hauserman Orchids out in Illinois. They're really great. Unfortunately, this time of year, I can't get anything from them because when they have a warm spell, we have a cold spell because their weather comes to us. I'll say, listen here, we have great weather. Ship me out some orchids. And they're like, no, we can't ship them to you because we have bad weather here and it's heading your way. So I am a very hard customer, they say, to get anything to in the wintertime. So I just don't even try anymore. It's actually easier to get my orchids in the winter from Carmela because they come from warm weather almost the entire way here. They don't hit cold weather, dangerously cold weather, till pretty much they're hitting Ohio. So that's a much easier way, and especially if they put a heat element in there, one of those little packages that keep it a little bit warmer. I have snuck a few orchids in from Hawaii in the wintertime. But yes, this one has such large pseudobulbs. I mean, oh my goodness. That's my hand. That's a pseudobulb. Very nice large pseudobulb. And it's got a lot of growth on it. I'm going to turn it around here. See this down here? That is a spike coming. And see that little bit of brown extra, some of the older leaves and things on there? That needs to come off. That is a breeding ground for trouble. You are just asking to have trouble with your orchids if you leave that on. Just very carefully pull it down. Sometimes it'll pull right off. And sometimes when you pull it down, you'll just need to snip it with a small pair of scissors. Just sterilize them, make sure they're clean, put them in some alcohol, and give it a real quick snip to get that off, because I'll tell you what happens. Mealybugs. I occasionally find a mealybug, and if I do, it's going to be down in a location like that. What I do with that is I take some alcohol spray, and of course I get rid of the mealybug, but then I spray down that area. And thus far I've been able to keep it fairly in check. I haven't had a lot of issues with them becoming a rampant issue, but I did have a beautiful hibiscus tree that I moved into the house for the winter. And I noticed the other day that it was dripping with aphids, dripping. So at 11:30 at night, I grabbed that thing and I drug it on the rug the whole way out into the garage, which I will treat that before then I'll have to move to the summer kitchen. It'll never come back upstairs near my orchids until I know it's completely free of all pests. But I'm hoping I got it out before any of those darn little aphids made their way onto any orchids, because I've not had to deal with that on orchids. But from what I hear, if you do have an aphid problem, they're just very, very tiny little green things, little bugs. You would spray it with some soapy water repeatedly, like wait a couple of days and do it again. They're supposed to be very easy to get rid of according to a local greenhouse here. Now, I want to show you this. This is looking a little ratty. This is compliments of Miss Lilibet. She thinks she has to chew on orchids. Thank goodness orchids are not poisonous. But here is, you see the lighter growth? That's new growth. Any leaf that you see that's a lot lighter in color, that is some new growth coming on. So I have 2 or 3 new growth points on this orchid. Now I'm going to move on over here. Actually I dropped back down here to the front. This is Zygopetalum cynosure bluebirds, and it is so pretty. Oh my goodness, it's a really pretty orchid. This one came from Groovy Plant Ranch again. Very, very pretty orchid. Very thick. The leaves are very, very thick compared to some of the other orchids. So once again, is that because it's the zygopetalum? Although, I'm just looking at the tag. This one is also a zygopetalum. So I don't know, but I'm assuming this one is going to stay a little bit smaller. The ones I have in the back are very large orchids, and I'll show you 2 more in a minute. Over here, let me see. Zygopetalum, Lucendorf, Rhine Moonlight, excuse me. Rhine Moonlight, yes. That came from Groovy also. And I want to show you this because this did have a lot of nice roots to show you. And once again, I have to do a little cleanup, some of the brown, dried up bits, but look at those. And I'm hoping that they get their little selves down into the pot a little bit deeper. But yeah, another very, very pretty, healthy plant. And I don't know, so many people complain that they have no success with them, and other people say tremendous success. So I don't know what's different in the care, what's causing it, if it's just environmental, because these are people who obviously know how to grow orchids. They have massive amounts of orchids. So it might just be an environmental thing that cannot be controlled, and I just happen to luck out. Now this one here is Zygopetalum Debbie DeMello Honolulu Baby. It is very pretty. Look at that new growth coming out. And let me see, is it a growth? You know what? I believe that's a spike. I'm going to say that's a spike because nowhere on this bulb do I see an old spike. That's just a stick holding it up because it was getting very tall. But I don't see a spike anywhere. So fingers crossed that's the spike. And here's another new growth coming on. But this one is probably, I'm going to back up so you can see it. This one is probably my tallest orchid. She's tall. So like I said, research which zygopetalum will suit your environment the best. If you don't have room for it, you're always going to struggle with it and you're never going to be happy. Just choose something that is to the size requirement that you need for your home and still leaves you a little bit of room for maybe 1 or 2 more orchids. And I think you'll be a lot happier than trying to squeeze in a giant that just is never going to please you with its growth pattern. So over here, once again, zoom in over here. I'm going to come over here for you. There is another new growth and a spike. So as long as I've had these, I'm beginning to think that they're going to bloom 2, possibly 3 times a year for me. So I'm pretty excited by that. I think they're doing very well. I'm not terribly upset by them, except with the one over there that's just not behaving. And I think I may just pot down a size just to see what's going on with it. But I also do believe that next year I will be adding a little bit of slow release fertilizer into my treatment care plan of them, as well as the granulated Better Grow formula that I already use. I just think it might give a little better bloom display if they had a little bit more fertilizer. So yeah, here they are. And I want to say, yes, I do water them all. If I forgot to mention it, I do water them all about once a week. And depending how dry they look, a quick deep dip in or a deep soak for 10-15 minutes. So if I see some that's looking very, very dry, they will get a longer soak. But they're so simple. You're not going to overwater these. They don't require a lot of sunlight either. I do want to cover that. I totally forgot. They are a lower light orchid. So once again, if you're in an apartment or you're in a place where you just don't have access to a lot of high light, like your cattleyas would prefer, then this is one of the orchids that might do very well for you. And they're beautiful. Lots of them stay in the purpley blue range. They're just so pretty. Some of them will have a green lip with the purple petals. And they're mainly, I believe, almost every one of these, maybe with the exclusion of 1 or 2, are highly fragrant. And I mean highly fragrant. You can smell them when you come into the room that they're in. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please like, share, subscribe, and above all, enjoy those orchids.